Salutations, everybody. It is Matty here today. Hope you're all doing absolutely fantastic. I just wanted to shout out all the real ones who wrote in on the community post over the weekend with words of love, support. I did need some of that, so thank you all so much. With that, on this Monday, I wanted to sit down to talk about some things changing at Bethesda. As someone who's covered them for a long while, I've noticed a bit of a shift in tone, a bit of a shift in energy, and all of this is in a positive way. So I wanted to focus on that in today's video. If you're new here and you're into Bethesda conversations, topics, news coverage, you're in the right place. Consider subscribing. But first, a word from our brand new sponsor. Oh, hi, didn't see you there. You're probably wondering why me, the man who willed TMNT Shredder's Revenge into Xbox Game Pass, is here in Mr. Matty's office. And it's because I'm happy to tell you that I have partnered with G Fuel. And yes, I did this so I can afford a brand new Blazer. Thank you very much. Now, when they first contacted me, I said, look, not really into energy drinks. Don't think this is gonna work. They said, hold the phone. We got people like you covered. They introduced me to this hydration line, and it is a match made in heaven. Not only in branding, because they have great flavors like a Spider-Man flavor, a Doctor Strange flavor that is absolutely godlike, but also that this line is for people like me who are about the health is wealth mindset, right? Electrolytes, antioxidants, vitamins, all packed away in the G Fuel hydration line. So it was a partnership that just made a lot of sense, and I'm stoked to be a part of the G Fuel family. So you'll be seeing a little bit of them here on the channel. And yes, maybe one day I'll be able to afford a brand new Blazer because of this. We'll see. But with that, if you're interested in supporting G Fuel, supporting me through that, head to the link in the description down below and check out some of the hydration line there. It tastes absolutely incredible. And it's a great sweet treat for those of you out there who have a little hankering. Maybe you want to have a soda, but you don't want to have the actual soda that's bad for you. This is a perfect substitute for that as well. Cannot recommend it enough. Now, what exactly is changing with Bethesda? I wanted to dive straight into it. It's their energy with the modding situation. Now, there has to be a bit of a recap / story to bring us to what is currently the topic of discussion. So with modders and Bethesda, there's always been this divide that I think was caused more by the fan base, because what would happen is Bethesda game studios would release their games. They would release modding tools alongside them. I know not everyone agrees, but I think inherently Bethesda Game Studios games have been great. I look at Fallout 3, I look at Skyrim, I look at Fallout 4. I love all of these games. And of course, dating back even further with Morrowind and Oblivion, I adore all of these games. So I think Bethesda by themselves releases fantastic games, and then they give tools to modders that a lot of times do fix issues that have consistently appeared in Bethesda games. I think of the unofficial Fallout 4 patch as one that Bethesda completely ignored. And then you look at 76, where there were bugs and glitches from Fallout 4 appearing in 76. That just can't happen, especially when modders are picking up on those things. And it's moments like those that created a bit of an understandable narrative that modders are what keep Bethesda games relevant and sustainable, not Bethesda themselves. I sit on the side of the fence again that really likes the vanilla Bethesda experience. I also love the modding experience, but I think the core games on their own are fine. I've played hundreds of hours of each of them, Morrowind withstanding, and I've loved my time with them, and I've put additional hours thanks to modding. So there has been this divide, and if you're a part of the Sega community, you may be familiar with this as well, with like Sonic the Hedgehog, and you look at mods like Sonic Project 06, which I think feel way better than a traditional modern Sonic game, and it does create an awkward conversation because ego is at stake now, because now you have some people who are hired to work on the project making what some are considering inferior products compared to the free fan-made ones. Why don't you just hire the modders? Well, that brings us one step forward. Go back to 2017, Bethesda introduces the Creation Club. Probably one of the most hated decisions across the entire games industry was the introduction of Creation Club, because no matter what way Bethesda tried to spin it, it always came out in one single way, and that was paid mods. And a lot of people were upset with this. I sat in a neutral position on this one, because for paid mods, I am, as I said before, very pro modder. I want these people to get paid. They do excellent work, and in a way, it is true that Bethesda games are kept alive for the amount of time they are by the modding community. Bethesda has been afforded such a luxury that they get to be like every other company on this planet in the games industry where they release their big open world game every 4 to 5 years, but that they're relevant for decades because they have a community that just customizes the life out of their game. And again, Bethesda gives them those tools, but it keeps things like Skyrim and Fallout 4 relevant. And I know it's a little bit different. We kind of have an inherent bias on this channel because we built it from the ground up with Bethesda content. So for a lot of you, like, it's kind of just something that's in the conversation regardless of the fact. But generally speaking, across the games industry, we still talk about Skyrim like it was yesterday. It's still a relevant game. And that's because of modders. It's also because of Bethesda's re-releases of it. But winding back to Creation Club, I sat neutrally in that position of wanting modders to get paid. However, what happened was the content that was there was limited by the infrastructure of what Creation Club was, and we weren't able to get what we envisioned originally, which is Bethesda supporting these modders, making quest lines, making whole new zones, and eventually they got there, but it wasn't as let off the leash as I think many of us had anticipated. And that was kind of unfortunate because it was an idea that was there that I've even been told by some modders that they were able to pay their apartment's rent with the money they made from working on Creation Club content. So again, there's value there. I have no issue with these modders making their bread. They certainly deserve it. And it was a way to get the modders a step closer to Bethesda without officially enrolling them in Bethesda themselves. But with Starfield and some recent hirings, this brings us to our current topic here. Things have changed. Now, Bethesda has brought in modders in the past, but they are on a hiring spree as it stands. And when I look at the way they're speaking about Starfield, which we'll dive into after the fact, but they're more recent hires, I think it's a really exciting time. Funny enough, just on Friday, I talk about Fallout London for the first time on this channel. I got to it pretty late. Shout out to all the love that video got and all the understanding of what I would call my Americana Fallout ignorance. But a lot of you were wonderful and supportive of the mindset that I had, even though it wasn't a good one, and got where I was coming from. But I make that video, and the day I make that video, of course, somehow, timing just being against me, they drop some news that there are people leaving their team to go work at Bethesda. And this isn't the first time this has happened. Bethesda has hired from the Fallout London team, quest designers, the lead writer, their lead technical advisor, which is going to be an associate quest designer. The project manager was offered a position for, albeit Fallout 76, but all of these were members of the Fallout London team. One thing that's great about modding games is it's something that you could put on your portfolio. A lot of people's arguments against that is, oh, you just want to put something good on your portfolio so then you can just go get a job and ditch the project. And to me, that mindset just immediately crumbles to dust, because if you release something that's such a negative conversation on the internet, like maybe how some people received content in Fallout Frontier, you have a problem there where it's like, is Bethesda running out and hiring a ton of their modders versus Fallout London, where the conversation has been largely positive ahead of any potential disaster that could happen with these mods. And that's also where Bethesda's understandable hesitance comes in. People were begging Bethesda to get involved on an official level with Fallout the Frontier, and we saw how that turned out, and I think their restraint was understandable. Even with how big this project was, how long it was in development for, you can sort of get why Bethesda's created some distance, but now they're closing the gap more. They're bringing modders from Fallout London in. Why is this important? Because the cycle begins anew, as I like to put it. What this means to me personally is that there's an ensured cycle of people like me. You grow up with Bethesda Game Studios games, you love these games, and for some, you love them so much that you fire up the creation engine and you start making your own content in them because you love the community, you love these games, and you want to add more to that. And because you're inspired by their past creations, you're making things in the mindset of how they made things. Bethesda catches wind of that. They like what you're doing. They like your resume. They bring you on board. And now this is younger talent coming in that is ensuring that future generations of that talent will continue the Bethesda culture. This isn't a small thing. I look at something like BioWare. BioWare in the early 2000s to about 2009 is one of my favorite stretches of gaming. You know, they made tons of my favorite games of all time in like a 6-year span between KOTOR, Jade Empire, Mass Effect, Dragon Age Origins. It was an unreal stretch. But as they grew as a company and as they brought in more talent, yes, many were attracted to what BioWare was, but some were attracted to what BioWare was to become. Live service focused with Anthem, multiplayer focused. That's not the BioWare that we know and love, and EA kind of charged them in that direction. And then you start to see the turnover where a lot of the excuses for how BioWare is nowadays is, well, this is a company has a lot of new blood in it. It's a different BioWare. You know, you don't have your Casey Hudsons, your Drew Karpyshins, so on and so forth, and that's true. But there also weren't people brought in that were inspired by their work and were sort of nurtured to make games in that style. So as time went on, BioWare further and further went off the pack until they were making, again, Anthem, a not BioWare style game. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure EA had some influence on that. But my point standing that turnover is a real thing in the industry and certain companies lose their vibe. Bethesda with 76 and to a lesser extent Fallout 4 for many people was losing their vibe. But when you start to see them bringing in Fallout modders to work on projects within Bethesda, and then the second part being Bethesda's energy with Starfield modding, it's a lot more encouraging. You see, there's always been a lot of, we love our modders. Well, of course Bethesda loves our modders. Like, that's the only thing they'd say. We always love mods. We think it's great. It's like, yeah, it keeps people buying your games. And you don't have to put money into it. You literally have people making content, hundreds of items of content a week for your game that people can download for free. They just have to buy your game in an official manner. So for you, you rack up probably millions of sales, and many people like myself double dipping because it's like, oh, I want the PC version for modding. I want to play this on Xbox or whatever. You know, you start to see increased sales. So of course you love your modders. What always stuck out to me, and we've talked about this a lot, but it's a second point to my conversation here, is when Todd Howard said nothing like, we love our modders, we think mods are great, but instead Starfield is a modder's dream, that they are designing their games and thinking about their modders along the way rather than making their own game and sort of just shipping it and being like, here, we'll get you the tools later, but instead creating content in a procedurally generated way, we'd assume, where some of these planets will be wide open, and Bethesda knows that modders are going to fill those up because these planets are in the thousands. They've already confirmed, like, yeah, they're going to be planets that are just negative space, just nothing's here. It's just a biome. And that'll suck for some, but the long-term vision here is clearly they're going to fill out their pocket of galaxies, and there's going to be hundreds of modders who come in, and every planet can become its own game. But Bethesda's tackling it with that energy in mind and calling it a modder's paradise. And even now, we're finally seeing Bethesda Game Studios start to take notes from their modders. You can't tell me you look at the settlement building in Starfield and not think of like the SimCity mods. There's just a different energy to Bethesda, and I'd say it's a positive one at that. I don't want to oversell it because, of course, the delivery of the product means everything, and I could be totally wrong here. But I just think based off what they're saying, the hiring they're doing, that things are starting to change at Bethesda, and they're understanding what kind of company people love them as. And maybe the energy for Starfield is starting to feed some of that. Like, people are excited for Starfield. So for me personally, I just wanted to have a conversation about that, on how things at Bethesda are indeed changing. And I think it's for the better. What do you think of this, though? Do you detect some changing of the guard here at Bethesda? Let me know what you're thinking in the comments down below. Other than that, follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram. Those links are in the description down below. And a big thank you to all the patrons, all the members who continue to support the hell out of the content here. Stay sexy, stay active. I love you all. Peace.